Hey there, welcome back to the Counter Service Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Jacobson, and this is a podcast dedicated to teaching organizations how to learn. Now, as you know, we've been in a series about how to develop a learning organization within your company. And today we hit step number 5, the final step in this very important cycle, really a atomic habit, as James Clear would talk about, deploying a habit within your organization. But before we hit step number 5 today, let's review the first 4 steps. The first step we said in developing a learning organization within your company is about cultivating a culture of curiosity. We know this starts with the leadership team, with modeling a growth mindset, understanding that autonomy, mastery, and purpose are the drivers to motivate and inspire employees. Step number 2 is about establishing a systematic design methodology to look back, to look forward, as well as learn from the future as it emerges. So are you reacting, redesigning, reframing, or even regenerating? And then step number 3 was about empower an ecosystem of experimentation, a steady flow and rhythm of prototyping, testing, and iterating, not just by the one or the few, but really throughout your organization, really impacting that ecosystem. Step number 4, last week we talked about transferring new ideas into new behavior. And we know this is about infusing new knowledge locally and corporately, and how that requires leaders and dedicated teams to evangelize and multiply it throughout the organization. And we stressed the power of common language, building shared understanding, and developing various pathways in providing multiple layers of learning, training, and application. Well, that brings us to step number 5 today in this cycle where learning is the real currency in 2022. And step number 5, maybe most importantly, is about measuring organizational impact. Measuring organizational impact is being able to draw a direct connection between organizational learning and organizational impact. I would never ask you to go through a pretty extensive cycle and have a consistent, methodical investment in continuous innovation by optimizing curiosity, creativity, and experimentation if I didn't also ask you to measure it, both qualitatively and quantitatively. So being able to draw a direct connection between organizational learning and organizational impact is truly important and is fundamental to sustaining a culture of curiosity, strategy, and advancement. Well, a quick example on the customer side of the ledger about measuring organizational learning and organizational impact. If you go back to step number 2, when we talked about establishing a systematic design methodology, one of the examples that I provided during that particular episode was about deploying a customer journey map, really challenging your original assumptions about the design of a product or the deployment of it, and whether that resonated or the experience of a customer, and really challenge your original assumptions and really look at a journey map and through challenging in that, establishing sort of a new pathway, a new approach for your customers. And then through step number 5 around measuring organizational impact is based on what you learned through that journey mapping experience. How did you redesign what you've done and really begin to measure its particular impact on employees? Because it may have had an impact or it may not have. Could there have been steps misaligned, data misinterpreted, misapplied, or has it exponentially transformed that particular experience for customers? So all that learning that took place, I would say that empathy map that you did and understanding your customers' experience, their needs, their wants, how they experience that along the way, can be measured and should be measured based on the learning that took place and the impact, whether that be positive or negative, moving forward. Now, on the employee side, I think there's also a way, as an example, to measure organizational learning and organizational impact. And it's a tool I've developed called POGV, Progress, Opportunities, Gaps, and Voice. My recommendation is if you're a team leader, you're not necessarily the CEO or a top executive, but anyone can deploy this where people report directly to you, or if no one reports to you, matter of fact, you could do this every month and maybe turn this into the person that you report to directly. So I really just challenge you to deploy this little atomic habit into your ecosystem as a way to measure organizational learning and as a connection to organizational impact. And a POGV tool simply is this, is around progress. Progress is about understanding from your perspective as an employee, or if you have a number of people that report to you, asking their perspective from their purview, whether you believe they're on target or not, you're really getting a sense of where they're coming from. You're asking what has been the progress from the previous month? What are the accomplishments in the task that you've finished or closed? And then what are some leadership lessons that you've learned from the previous month? So really kind of encapsulating what is the progress from the previous month. Getting their purview gives you so much insight about how to work with them in a deeper way and how to deploy other training or other learning exercises and moments into the rhythm and flow of your team as you move forward. So that's progress. In terms of opportunities, what asking them and asking from their perspective, what opportunities are you focused on for the upcoming month? What are you trying to achieve over the next month? And what are the critical tasks that need to be completed in the upcoming month? Getting that perspective and their purview of that gives you such an insight to see whether that's truly aligned with what you are asking them to do or what you have collaborated with them on the past, or does it achieve a 90-day batch cycle? Does it achieve a one-year goal, or stepping back from that, even a quarterly objective that you've identified? That purview of having them talk about opportunity should be so in line in many ways, but if it's not in line, it gives you true insight to where they're coming from, and actually it could be helpful and maybe change your perspective or assumption as a leader. So that's progress and opportunities. Also a part of this tool is asking about gaps. Getting from their perspective, where is there a gap between the message from a leadership team, the goals that we've stated, and the experience? It's kind of like you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. For an employee, asking them where's the gap between the message and the experience, getting that purview and perspective, extremely important. Also in the gap section, asking them tell me about some new risk that have emerged, or an increase in overall risk. Risk itself, getting from their perspective on how risk tolerant they are, risk averse, what is their risk quotient, what are they identified as risk within the product line or the team in which they're on, or the landscape in which they're taking a look at within your company. Really an important question to ask. And then finally in the gap section is about what issues are preventing you from fulfilling your role, the tasks that are before you, the objectives, the goals and priorities that we've set. What is preventing you? What's a roadblock preventing you from being able to do that? And then finally, around the voice section, maybe the most important one is asking them the question through this POGV tool, what question do you wish you were asked by the person that you report to, or someone in leadership within your company? Because maybe they're not willing to ask that question, but if they were asked the question, what would that question be? Getting that answer, could hurt, could be painful, or could be so insightful and so transformative as you're in a cycle of curiosity, in a cycle of design methodology and experimentation in transferring these new ideas. Maybe it's a new idea for you as a leader. Also in this voice section is asking them, over the past month, what have you said yes to and what have you said no to? I'm telling you, when you talk about efficiency and working smarter and what are they truly focused on, this is an interesting perspective to get from your employees. And then lastly, when you talk about voice, what leadership principles do you want to pursue to build greater capacity within yourself? So that's about voice. Progress, opportunities, gaps, and voice. This POGV tool, I really challenge any leader to deploy this habit on a consistent basis within your team and really get that perspective, their purview on each one of those. Each one of them in their own are important for the perspective of an employee, but also as a way to help transform your team as well, because then you're able to pull them together, you're able to synthesize them. It might create new opportunities for you as a leader when you meet with someone one-on-one to really go through this. What I didn't talk about as extensively with this POGV tool, there's a tagging system that you can attach to each one of these sections that can be really important, from must celebrate, action required, resources needed, must celebrate, all sorts of tagging systems that could be particularly important when you're analyzing and then synthesizing this, and then also looking at trends and thread lines from employee to employee within your team. This tool itself truly measures and draws a connection between organizational learning and organizational impact. So I just challenge any leader to deploy that within their system. So that's step number 5 about measuring organizational impact in a very brief way. So I really challenge you to go through each step again, and over the coming year, we're actually going to break these down in a greater way. I've given you kind of a high-level version over the past 5 weeks of what this learning cycle looks like. And yet, we're going to go deeper and provide you and equip you with many more tools in the succeeding months. If you'd like to know more about the POGV tool, reach out to me and let me know what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're feeling about the work you're doing with your team and the collaboration that's taking place and the coordination, and whether that's efficient and productive and really effective. Let's continue to work together across the counter and learn from each other related to these very important questions, because learning is the real currency in 2022. Thank you again for joining me for another episode of the Counter Service Leadership Podcast and sitting across from me from the counter as we are on this journey together to grow, to learn, improve, and really to set the conditions for people to do what they've been called to do. Thank you.